The roar of water crashing against ceramic tiles cut through the summer heat like a thunderclap. Maggie's scream echoed off the pool's walls, sharp and desperate, as she tumbled beneath the surface. In that heartbeat, Linda Sullivan's world tilted. Neighbors spilled into backyards, lawn chairs overturned, sprinklers whirled uselessly in stunned disbelief. Cooper, the 3-year-old pit bull known for running from rain puddles, froze at the pool's edge. His hackles rose. He hesitated for a breath too long, then lunged. Welcome to the Heart Force channel, where you and I find more meaning in life through dog stories. Before we continue, please comment below and let us know where you're listening to this video. And if you have any stories about my loyal friend, please share them with us. Summer in Oak Haven was meant for sunlit laughter, not nightmares. But for the Sullivans, that July afternoon became the prologue to everything that would follow. Mike Sullivan, veteran K-9 handler and Maggie's hero in uniform, arrived moments later, diving into the water to pull his daughter to safety. Cooper paddled beside him, muzzle gentle around Maggie's pink floatie, escorting her to the shallow end with every ounce of desperation and love he could summon. That day, Cooper conquered his own terror, a dog who trembled at sprinklers, who once panicked at the sight of rain, had forged through choking chlorine to save a child. It was so sudden, so utter a reversal of everything everyone believed about him, that whispers of miracle rippled through the neighbors. By nightfall, news vans lined the street. Reporters jostled for footage of the pit bull who ignored a lifetime of fear to protect a child. Photos of Cooper's soaked, shaking form dripped across social media, each image a pulse of astonishment. How could this breed, vilified by headlines, be capable of such grace? But while the world celebrated, back home the Sullivans braced for the storm of prejudice they'd unleashed. Oak Haven's Homeowners Association, a bastion of traditional values, was already splitting in two, those who saw Cooper as hero and those who saw only the dog they feared. The next morning, flyers appeared on doors. Dangerous breed lives here. Anonymous flyers. No signature. Linda woke before dawn, dragging herself through the kitchen to find Maggie curled around Cooper's favorite toy. The little girl's eyes stretched open, blinking tears away. "He saved me, Mommy," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart." Linda's voice cracked. She stroked Cooper's ear as he lay watchful at their feet. "You saved each other." In the days that followed, every good deed Cooper performed turned into proof of aggression. When he barked at a loose raccoon, neighbors claimed he was primed to attack. When he led Linda away from a kitchen fire, sniffing out smoldering crayons, some insisted it was hysterical jumping. Even Cooper's gentle habit of nudging Maggie away from shadows at bedtime was twisted into ominous guarding. Each new accusation demanded a response. Phone calls, emails, HOA meetings protracted into dark evenings of angry faces and shouted ultimatums. Code of conduct, breed restrictions, fines, threats. The Sullivans were forced to file affidavits, gather video evidence, and haul Cooper to temperament tests, each a grueling insult dressed as due process. They refused to abandon him. They could not teach Maggie to stand against bullies by yielding to them. Yet the real battle wasn't legal. It was moral. The line drawn in Oak Haven soil was between fear and trust. And while Cooper carried his humiliation in his soulful gape, Maggie carried hers in a silent dread of classmates who scurried past her, eyes down. Linda watched her daughter shrink, heard her make excuses to stay inside, and vowed that injustice would not win. So they fought, organizing neighborhood barbecues, inviting both skeptics and supporters, inviting children to read by Cooper's side, showing security camera clips of his gentle rescue, time and again, sharing articles about therapy pit bulls in hospitals and courthouses. Each event was a dramatic loop, hope rising, then crashing into renewed hostility, then swelling again. Midweek, during a thunderstorm that knocked out power across Oak Haven, Cooper's instincts soared above his terror of thunder. He led the Sullivans down to the basement moments before a tree limb splintered through their living room roof. No one was hurt, No one but their fragile faith in community unity was shaken. Still, the opposition grew stubborn. Letters arrived accusing Cooper of staging events to win sympathy. A social media page, Safe Schools, No Pit Bulls, gathered momentum, its moderators happily sharing sensationalized dog attack videos from across the country. Each twist came every few minutes like clockwork. Just when Cooper's defenders believed they had momentum, a new crisis erupted. Through it all, Cooper never wavered. He stayed at Maggie's side during her nightmares, scented her safe under blankets, and refused to abandon his post at the pool gate despite orders to keep him indoors. His presence comforted her. It reminded her and Linda and Mike that love was stronger than fear. On the 7th day after the rescue, the Sullivans held a small gathering by their pool. A handful of neighbors arrived, some curious, some still wary. Mike spoke quietly about character over breed. Linda played Maggie's favorite song. Maggie held Cooper close. They laughed, they cried, and they saw, in each other's faces, the healing power of shared vulnerability. That evening closed without incident. No flyers, no threats, just the hum of crickets and the sighing breeze through oak leaves. Cooper lay beside Maggie's floatai, ears limp, eyes bright. He had done the impossible. He had given everyone a glimpse of a better world, one in which loyalty conquers prejudice and truth outshines rumor. Dawn brought no relief, only a heavier quiet. The ripples from Atlas's leap still coursed through Willow Creek, Oregon, but the Harper family felt the backlash before sunrise. Flyers lay tacked to their front gate. Dangerous breed, keep away. No signature, no epalyi, just fear. Jessica Harper stared at the paper, stomach twisting. David's coffee sat untouched on the table. Lily, still in her nightgown, clutched Atlas's favorite squeaky ball, her fingernails white with worry. Atlas lay beside her, ears pricked, as if bracing for another storm. The rescue had saved Lily's life, but stripped away their neighbor's trust. By mid-morning, the Harpers learned of an emergency HOA meeting. Notices slid under doors on their cul-de-sac. Pool safety discussion, pit bull presence. Jessica tried to steel herself. David squeezed her hand. Atlas nosed Lily's hand, his deep eyes begging them to stand firm. They arrived at Willow Creek Community Hall to find rows of folding chairs filled with angry faces. The president, Carla Trent, called the meeting to order. "We cannot have this," she began, voice trembling, an unregulated animal threatening our children. A murmur of assent rippled through the crowd. Jessica stood, voice calm but firm. "Atlas saved Lily. Your own video shows it. He acted by instinct, by love." She held up her phone and played the pool footage. Atlas's powerful stroke, muzzle cradling Lily's arm, brought gasps from skeptics and supporters alike. A dramatic loop, trust rose, then the president abruptly cut the feed, citing time limits. No twist came this time, only more resistance. Carla dismissed the clip as cherry-picked. David pleaded for common sense. Breed doesn't define character. Atlas is family. But logic met brick walls. Someone shouted about liability. Others hissed about precedent. Atlas remained silent in the corner, tail tucked, powerless to defend himself. Back home, Lily refused to go outside. She ate breakfast at the kitchen table while Atlas sat by the door, head tilted. Confused, Jessica knelt and whispered, "We'll fix this, baby. I promise." Atlas licked Lily's cheek, a tiny loop of comfort amid chaos. That afternoon, a twist erupted without warning. Jessica smelled smoke. She followed the acrid scent to the kitchen. A crayon smoldered on the stove's back burner, curled edges glowing red. Lily, innocently playing, had left her art supplies too close. Atlas's frantic barking shattered the haze of panic. Labrador-sized, but gentle-natured. He banged his heavy front paws on the cabinet door until Jessica flung it open and snuffed the ember with a dish towel. In moments, neighbors would credit him with aggression for rattling the house. But Jessica saw salvation. Atlas had saved the day again, this time without water. She hugged him tightly as tears streamed down her face. Atlas nuzzled her, head low, as if saying, "I did it for Lily." Another loop of heroism, another twist against prejudice. Yet the following morning brought more tension. An anonymous social media page, Safe Streets, No Pit Bulls, published a photo of Atlas barking at a raccoon. The caption claimed he had attacked wildlife. What about children? Comments ignited like tinder. No one paused to ask context. No one remembered Atlas's dog-faced devotion. At Lily's preschool, Jessica overheard whispers. "Isn't that the girl whose dad brought a pit bull?" Small voices asked to sit elsewhere. Lily's bright check-in turned to tears. Jessica clenched Atlas's leash on the way home. Baby steps toward a broken world. Then, as if battling fate itself, Atlas's instinct struck again. A thunderstorm rolled in, cracking sky, shuttering windows. Atlas, terrified of thunder, cowered at first. But when lightning struck a tree in their side yard, crashing through the roof's overhang, Atlas bounded toward danger. His bark summoned Jessica and Lily into the hallway. Seconds later, a splintered pine limb slammed onto the porch where they'd stood moments before. Neighbors later praised the Harpers for good home construction planning. The truth, Atlas led them to safety. A wild twist, fear eclipsed by unwavering loyalty. But the HOA did not relent. They issued a formal notice. Atlas must be confined indoors or removed from premises. A fine of $500 per day loomed. Jessica and David faced a grim choice: abandon their dog or pay until bankruptcy. Atlas, once a trembling puppy, had become a lightning rod for vengeance. In response, David organized a small gathering at the Harper home. 5 families braved invitation. They arrived with side glances, but children came forward to pat Atlas through the fence, remembering the rescue. A hesitant neighbor, Mr. Kim, confessed he'd seen Atlas tiptoe along the fence to comfort his own sobbing daughter one night. Another, Ms. Flores, admitted that her cat remained healthy thanks to Atlas gently guiding it from the busy street. Each story peeled away layers of fear, small victories in a war of hearts. As dusk fell, Jessica led neighbors to the poolside and recounted Lily's rescue. Then she offered lemonade and cookies. Atlas lay next to Lily, muzzle on her lap. The air grew soft with understanding. Yet just as hope hovered, John Reynolds, HOA board member, stormed in, snatching his grandson's hand. "This is staged," he spat. "Next, you'll water that grass to hide evidence." His accusation hung like a curse. Jessica, voice steady, responded, "If love is a lie, then let us live in it." A hush fell. Atlas lifted his head. Lily smiled bravely. In that moment, for once, fear faltered. Inside, David found a flyer on his windshield. Flooded pool accidents, seen only in pit bull households. No signature, no evidence, only prejudice. By night's end, the Harpers descended into the living room. Atlas on his mat, Lily asleep on the couch, Jessica and David exhausted but resolute. They would not surrender. They had faced darkness and kept walking forward. They believed love was more powerful than rumor. Outside, Atlas dozed, dreaming perhaps of swimming without fear, of constant joy instead of suspicion. The next day promised new battles. Another HOA meeting, another digital smear campaign, another twist of cruelty. But the Harpers had learned something vital. Cruelty might circle like sharks, but loyalty and truth could run stronger and deeper, like a river carving stone. They would fight, together. The courtroom gallery smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Judge Morales peered over her glasses as Carla Trent, HOA president, argued bloodlessly for Atlas's removal. Liability, she droned. Precedent. Every word struck like steel against Jessica Harper's heart. Across the room, David clasped Atlas's leash. Atlas sat obediently at his feet, ears flicking at every murmur. Jessica fought tears. Outside, supporters and protesters clashed in heated whispers, some waving "Let Atlas stay" signs, others "Save our children" flyers. It felt less like justice and more like a lynch mob wearing suits. Suddenly, the doors burst open. Dr. Elena Ruiz, renowned behaviorist, strode in, breathless. "Your Honor," she began, handing over her CV and detailed temperament report. "I evaluated Atlas under controlled conditions. He displayed zero aggression in 100 standardized tests." Murmurs rippled. Carla's lips tightened. Judge Morales flipped through the files. "Ms. Harper, is this accurate?" Jessica swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." Dr. Ruiz witnessed his rescue, his fire warning, the storm alert. Her voice cracked. "Atlas has saved lives." A tense silence, then Carla's final retort. "We cannot gamble community safety, even with one case." The gavel fell. Atlas must go. Outside, cameras swarmed. The verdict felt like a punch to the gut. David wrapped his arm around Jessica as Atlas leaned into her side, head low. Lily's small hand reached for Atlas's muzzle, tears streaking her cheeks. "My hero," she sobbed. But true heart forces rarely die in defeat. That evening, Emily Brooks, the investigative journalist, published an exposé detailing Carla Trent's conflict of interest. Her spouse owned the insurance firm set to profit from new HOA liability policies. The article rippled through local news and social media. Comments shifted, fear tempered by outrage at betrayal. The next morning, flyers demanding Carla's resignation covered Willow Creek doors. A twist, the villain was unmasked. The community's moral sign wave soared. Hope returned, only to dip sharply when Carla refused to step down, accusing Jessica of fabricating the report. Public opinion split again. Still, a small miracle emerged. Mrs. Tran, a retired lawyer who'd quietly observed Atlas since the pool incident, offered free legal representation. With her help, the Harpers filed an injunction against the HOA's breed-specific ban. The paperwork felt like armor, proof that love could be fought for in courts as well as backyards. As autumn leaves flirted with the sidewalks, Atlas's world shrank to early morning walks and late-night refuge beside Lily's bed. But outside, the battle raged. Heated editorials, community forums, even lawn signs proclaiming behavior over breed. The Harper home became a fortress of convictions. One rainy afternoon, a sudden knock rattled the door. Atlas tensed. Rain was his enemy. Jessica opened it to find Carla Trent standing drenched, clutching a wet package. Inside, a box of old photographs showing Carla's own grandfather decades ago with a sled dog rescue team in Alaska. He'd been lionized for saving trapped miners. Carla's voice wavered. I'm sorry. I forgot what courage meant." Atlas stepped forward, water dripping, tail timidly wagging. Carla knelt, stroked his damp fur. "I've been wrong," she whispered. Another twist, the adversary breaking. Yet redemption did not come easily. That night, an anonymous threat was taped to their gate. "Traitor dog, watch your back." Atlas's hackles rose even in sleep. Lily bolted upright, calling Atlas. He bounded from the living room, crashing into her arms. In his eyes, protection. A week later, Jessica led a group of neighbors in repainting the old community sign. They scrubbed away graffiti that once read, "No pit bulls," and revealed, "Welcome to Willow Creek. All are welcome." Atlas supervised, tongue lolling, paws muddy. Children ran to pat him. Parents stood awkwardly before offering hesitant smiles. Slowly, the portrait of hatred faded. But fate wasn't finished testing them. On Halloween night, a fire broke out in the apartment complex across the street. Flames licked the second floor. Frantic cries echoed. David snatched Atlas's leash. "Go," he shouted. Atlas bolted through the rain-slicked street toward the smoke, ignoring thunder. He darted between cars, nose to the ground, until he found Mrs. Patel's terrified toddler creeping toward the blaze. Baring his teeth in a stern warning bark, Atlas guided the child back to safety, then circled until Jessica and David arrived with blankets and phone calls to 911. Paramedics and firefighters arrived to find Atlas leaning protectively over the child, soaked and unharmed. Cameras clicked again, another twist rewriting Willow Creek's narrative. This time, the hero could not be denied. The next morning's headlines proclaimed Pit bull guardian angel saves toddler from flames. No qualifiers. No outrage. Just gratitude. Inside their home, Lily pinned the newspaper to the refrigerator. Atlas lay at her feet, head resting on his paws. She hugged his neck. "You always know what to do," she whispered. Atlas licked her cheek, eyes soft. As winter edged closer, the Harpers prepared for the injunction hearing. Now armed with evidence of community support, Carla's weakened stance, and Mrs. Tran's legal prowess, they faced the judge again. This time, Judge Morales listened intently to a parade of testimonies. First responders praising Atlas's fire rescue. Neighbors recounting his gentle comfort during Maggie's nightmares. Dr. Ruiz affirming his stable temperament. Carla herself admitting error. When the gavel finally fell, the words were simple. HOA breed restrictions are unenforceable. Atlas may remain. The courtroom erupted. Atlas barked once, chest heaving, as Jessica and David hugged him. That afternoon, the Harpers walked Atlas along the now-quiet cul-de-sac. Neighbors emerged, tossing treats, patting his head. Lily rode her bike beside him, giggling as Atlas trotted proudly at her side. The final loop, fear defeated by truth, prejudice unraveled by consistent love. Inside, Carla Trent drafted her resignation letter from the HOA board. She delivered it with Atlas by her side, offering thanks. He sniffed her hand, forgiving all. Over hot cocoa that night, the family celebrated quietly. Atlas, wrapped in a new knitted blanket from Mrs. Tran, lay happily among them. The courtroom battles were over, but the journey continued. Community healing, policy reforms, and ongoing education about behavior-based rules. Atlas's head dipped as he drifted to sleep, his muzzle graying but spirit undimmed. In his dreams, he raced through sunlit fields free of fear. And when dawn broke, he would awaken ready to protect, to comfort, and to challenge any lingering shadows of doubt. Spring arrived in Willow Creek with misty mornings and blooming dogwoods. Atlas stretched on the dewy lawn, nose buried in clover. Lily chased butterflies while Jessica and David tended the garden. Peace had settled over their neighborhood. A fragile calm earned with courage. That calm shattered late one afternoon. A troop of scouts pitched tents by the creek for a weekend camp. Dark clouds rolled in faster than expected. Thunder snarled overhead. Jessica glanced toward the woods and saw a boy slip on the slick bank, tumbling into the swollen current. His scream was swallowed by the roar of rushing water. Atlas sprang upright, muscles coiling. He bolted across the yard, plunging into the creek with a single bound. His paws churned the dark water as he surged downstream. Jessica grabbed Lily's hand. "He's going after him," she gasped. Lily nodded, silent tears welling. The current tested Atlas's strength. It tugged at his lean frame, spun him like driftwood. But he angled toward a submerged log jam where the boy, a scout named Ethan, was pinned by a broken branch. His small face was white with terror. Atlas circled, barking with urgent intensity. He bit the branch's splintered end, tugging with all his weight. Water washed over his head, stinging his eyes. Branches scraped his coat. Still he tugged. Adult voices rang in the distance as troop leaders raced along the bank, flashlights bobbing in the gloom. For a moment, Atlas paused. His jaws slipped off the branch. Ethan slipped lower, bubbles spilling from his lips. Time froze. Then Atlas lunged again, latching onto a loosened knot. He heaved backward, chest trembling, and the branch cracked free. Water gushed around them. With one final stroke, Atlas guided Ethan toward the shore. Troop leaders swooped in to haul the drenched boy to safety. "He's hypothermic," someone shouted. Others wrapped Ethan in blankets. Jessica and David waded into the shallows, Lily clutching Atlas's soaked fur. Ethan coughed, sputtered, gasping for breath. Rescue was at hand, but the crisis wasn't over. Atlas staggered as he reached shallow water. His hind leg snagged on a jagged rock. He collapsed face first into mud. Lily knelt beside him, tears streaming. "Atlas, no." Her voice cracked. David scooped Atlas into his arms. The dog whimpered, a low, broken sound. Jessica dialed 911 again, this time for Atlas. Neighbors rushed from their homes, phones ready. The same cameras that once filmed suspicion now captured grief. Atlas's muzzle quivered. The creek's red clay stained his fur. Two paramedics arrived with a stretcher and a PET oxygen mask. They worked swiftly, covering Atlas in a thermal blanket, checking his pulse. Jessica knelt, stroking Atlas's head. Lily pressed her cheek against his. "You saved him," she whispered. Atlas licked her tear-streaked face, eyes half open. At the emergency vet clinic minutes later, Atlas was rushed inside. The waiting room overflowed with neighbors who'd come to stand vigil. Some held candles. Others stood in silent salute. A few wore behavior over breed pins. Skeptics gathered at the door, voices hushed, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Jessica paced the hallway. David sat with Lily beside him, her small head resting on his shoulder. "He's so brave," Lily murmured. David nodded. "He always is." Inside the treatment room, Dr. Ruiz and a team of vet technicians worked to stabilize Atlas. They found a deep laceration on his hind leg and early signs of hypothermia. A series of X-rays confirmed no broken bones. Despite the injuries, his heart remained strong. Every beep of the monitor was a pulse of hope. Hours passed like days. The fluorescent lights hummed. Finally, Dr. Ruiz emerged. Her coat was stained with iodine. She offered a tired smile. "Atlas is stable. He'll need rest and antibiotics, but he's a tough boy. He pulled through the worst of it." Relief washed over everyone. That night, Atlas lay on a padded bed in the Harper living room, bandages on his leg, and a soft muzzle mask for oxygen support. Lily slipped beside him and whispered, "You're my hero, Atlas." He turned his head, tail thumping once, slow but steady. The next morning, word spread of Atlas's recovery. At Willow Creek Elementary, students made get-well cards covered in paw prints and rainbow drawings. Lily's class presented a giant banner, "Get well, our guardian." Teachers pinned it above Atlas's crate at home. At the Harper front gate, neighbors left bouquets of daffodils and handwritten notes. One card read, "Thank you for saving our boy and for healing our hearts." Across the street, the community sign shone with fresh paint, its message unwavering. Willow Creek welcomes all. Yet a final twist awaited. A letter arrived from the HOA. A request to re-examine Atlas's confined hours restriction. They cited the rescue as evidence of risk. "Your dog endangered himself and others," it claimed. Even in triumph, prejudice reached for a new foothold. Jessica's jaw tightened as she read the letter aloud to David and Lily. Atlas's ears pricked. He lifted his head, sensing the tension. Lily knelt and hugged him, bandaged leg and all. "We won't let this happen again," she vowed. "We'll fight." Atlas licked her forehead, a gentle reassurance. Then he drifted off to sleep, head on Lily's lap, dreaming of wide-open fields and clear streams, free of danger, free of doubt. In those quiet moments, the Harpers realized their journey was not over. They had seen fear and prejudice rethink itself. They had proven that character mattered more than labels. But love demanded vigilance. Courage required constant renewal. Atlas needed rest. The community needed unity. And the Harpers needed to stand ready for whatever came next. Because in Willow Creek, every hero's return sparked new chapters of hope and new battles for justice. Morning light filtered through frost-rimmed windows as Atlas stirred on his quilted bed. His hind leg, wrapped in a crisp white bandage, twitched at a memory of the creek's rapids. Lily patted in, clutching her art pad, now full of drawings of Atlas's rescues. She knelt and pressed a kiss to his muzzle. "You did it again, hero." The final challenge arrived that afternoon. A regional animal behavior conference organized a high-profile debate in Seattle. Breed versus behavior. Lessons from hero dogs. The Harpers were invited to speak alongside experts, first responders, and legislators. It was their chance to shape policy beyond Willow Creek. The conference hall buzzed with tension and hope. Jessica took the stage first, her voice clear and calm. She showed a montage. Atlas saving Lily, dousing kitchen fires, spirited river rescues, and guiding toddlers from flames. Each clip pulsed with truth. Then David described the HOA battles, the legal injunction, and the community's journey from fear to trust. He cited data on behavior-based regulations, highlighting how Atlas's case exposed the flaws of breed-specific laws. A hush fell as Dr. Elena Ruiz delivered her professional verdict. Atlas's temperament tests rank him in the highest category of stability and sociability. She presented longitudinal studies showing no correlation between breed and aggression. Each statement landed like a pebble in a silent pond, spreading ripples of conviction. Next, the moderator invited audience questions. A state senator rose, voice steady. Given Atlas's story, will you support legislation banning breed bans in our state? Murmurs of assent rippled. Then a representative from an animal welfare group asked about funding for community outreach. Jessica and David proposed the Willow Creek model, free training workshops, neighborhood meet-and-greet days for shelter dogs, and therapy dog visits to schools and hospitals. Just as momentum peaked, a recorded video played of an emergency call. A frightened driver stranded on a snow-slick highway, rescued by a police K-9 team that included a pit bull mix. Atlas's former kennel mate, Bolt. The driver's voice quivered. We thought all pit bulls were killers. That dog saved my life. Tears streaked across faces in the audience. A new twist. Atlas's story was only one of many. The final panelist, a state Supreme Court justice, rose and declared, I will draft a bill to end breed-specific legislation, focusing instead on individual assessments. Applause thundered. Atlas, perched beside Lily on a raised platform, wagged his tail with slow, dignified joy as ribbons of realization unfurled across the hall. Back in Willow Creek, change blossomed quickly. The HOA formally repealed all breed restrictions and adopted behavior-based guidelines. The community pool welcomed all canine visitors during supervised safety swim sessions. Linda's school introduced lessons from Atlas into its curriculum, teaching empathy and courage. Local media ran weekly features on dogs in service, fostering a culture of inclusion. Early spring brought the grand opening of Atlas Park, a fenced woodland trail and pond complex open to all breeds. On opening day, children paraded in puppy costumes. Firefighters offered water safety demos. Rescue squads held meet and greets. Atlas, now 13 with silver whiskers, led the ribbon cutting. His steps were careful but proud. That evening, the Harpers gathered in their rebuilt backyard. New trees, fresh grass, a pond mirroring that fateful creek. Atlas lay in the center, breathing in the fragrant air. Lily nestled at his side, now 10 and determined to become a veterinarian. She stroked his head, voice soft. Thank you for teaching us how to stand tall. David watched the sunset, arm around Jessica. We fought a long war, he said, but look at this world we've shaped. She nodded. He showed us that courage isn't born of muscle or size. It's born of love. Atlas closed his eyes, content. Beyond the pool's edge, beyond courthouse floors, beyond conference stages, the greatest victory was in every changed heart. In every family that opened its arms to a dog once feared. In every child who learned that heroes come in unexpected packages. As night fell, fireflies blinked over the pond. Atlas lifted his head one last time, eyes bright with gentle wisdom. Then he lay down again, dreaming of clear streams and endless fields. The world he helped transform stood guard around him, no longer shackled by prejudice, but free to see truth beneath the fur. Atlas's journey teaches us that true courage often lives inside the misunderstood. Prejudice fades when faced with unwavering loyalty and selfless acts. We witnessed how one dog's rescue rippled through a community, reshaping laws, healing wounds, and building bridges of empathy. His story reminds us that character is not determined by appearance, but by deeds of the heart. When love confronts fear, it transforms both. Atlas showed us that courage demands persistence, that justice requires compassion, and that real change happens when we choose to stand for those without a voice. May we carry his legacy forward in our own lives. How has an animal's loyalty changed you? Share your story in the comments below and join our community of Heart Force heroes. If Atlas's journey inspired you, subscribe to the Heart Force channel for more uplifting tales of courage, love, and transformation. Let's spread hope together. The quiet before dawn was broken by a sound no one expected, a low growl, a desperate scratching at the door, and then the thud of paws soaked in mud. Officer Mark Dalton barely had time to look up from his desk when the door to the Ashland Police Department flew open. A massive German shepherd, matted, bleeding, and gaunt, stumbled in. She carried something gently in her mouth, a whimpering, shaking puppy. She laid him down at Mark's feet, her eyes locking with his. Those eyes, he knew them. There was pain in them, but also purpose. This wasn't just any dog. This was Shadow, his old partner's canine, believed lost in the chaos of a failed raid 5 years ago. And now, somehow, she was back with a pup. Her body shook from exhaustion, but she turned to leave immediately. Mark stepped forward. "Shadow," he whispered. She stopped in the doorway and looked back at him, just for a second. Then she disappeared into the Virginia mist. Welcome to the Heart Force channel, where you and I find more meaning in life through dog stories. Before we continue, please comment below and let us know where you are listening to this video. And if you have any dog stories of your own, feel free to share them with everyone. Ashland, Virginia wasn't the kind of place you expected to find yourself caught in a storm of secrets. Nestled between quiet farmland and old Civil War battlefields, it was a town where people said good morning and meant it, where doors were still left unlocked and people still believed in second chances. But that morning, Officer Mark Dalton knew something had shifted. He stared at the muddy paw prints on the tile floor, still fresh. He could hear the soft whimper of the pup from the break room, where Officer Jenna Brooks had taken him to warm up. And all he could think about were the ghosts. 5 years ago, Dalton had been one of the most decorated canine handlers in the state of Virginia. He and Officer Greg Monroe were partners in everything, on duty and off. And Shadow, Greg's loyal German shepherd, was the soul of their unit. They had cracked cold cases, found lost children in the mountains, even rescued survivors in floods. But then came the raid. It was supposed to be routine, a bust on an illegal kennel in rural Caroline County. But it turned into chaos. Explosions, gunfire, confusion. Greg didn't make it out. Shadow vanished into the night during the firefight. The facility burned to the ground. The only thing recovered was a bloodied collar and the smell of fire. Dalton had never forgiven himself, not for hesitating, not for freezing in that one moment that could have changed everything. Shadow was gone, or so he thought. Now here she was, older, battered, but alive. And with her, a puppy. Jenna stepped into the room, carrying the little bundle and a towel. "Mark, this pup's maybe 4 weeks old. No ID chip, but..." She hesitated. "There's a scar, a surgical one, just under the shoulder." Mark's blood ran cold. "Scar?" he asked. She nodded. "Someone's done something to this pup, and not something legal." His heart thudded. If Shadow had risked coming here, risked being seen, then she wasn't just running from something. She was trying to save something, to warn someone, and she had come to him. Dalton went to his desk and pulled open the bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of dusty case files was a photograph. Greg, him, and Shadow, all in uniform, all smiling, before everything fell apart. He closed his eyes. "I let you down," he whispered to the photo, "but I won't let her down again." That afternoon, Dr. Ellie Carson from the Ashland Veterinary Center arrived to examine the puppy. She was quiet, professional, and deeply concerned. "This puppy's been injected with something, some kind of compound. I've seen this before in dogs used for testing," she said grimly. Dalton sat still. "You're saying this pup was a lab animal?" Ellie nodded. "Or worse, bred and modified for fighting or trafficking. The scarring suggests surgical implants, some kind of chip or monitoring device. Whoever did this wasn't just experimenting. They were monitoring development." Jenna spoke up from across the room. and Shadow brought him here. She knew this place. She knew you. Dalton shook his head. She should have hated me. She didn't come here for hate, Ellie said. She came here for help. Night settled in, heavy and thick like the weight in Dalton's chest. He couldn't sleep, not knowing Shadow was out there, not knowing what she'd endured, and not knowing what still hunted her. He sat in the evidence room alone, reviewing old files. Reports from that kennel raid. Names he hadn't seen in years. Unexplained funding. Mysterious shell companies. Disappearances of trained dogs across multiple counties. He started to piece it together. Then he found it. A name, Ronin Biotech. A private research facility that had been under investigation but escaped scrutiny due to lack of evidence. But he remembered the name, because it had appeared once, in Greg Monroe's final report. The one he never got to finish. The one he had left folded in the visor of their cruiser, scrawled in his handwriting. Ronin Biotech. They were still operating. And now Dalton had a lead. He looked out the window, hoping to see some sign of Shadow in the distance. But there was only fog. Still, he whispered, "You found your way back. And now, I'm going to find you." By sunrise, Officer Mar Dalton was already dressed in plain clothes, his badge tucked into his coat pocket, and a hot thermos of coffee resting on the passenger seat. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. Not with Shadow out there somewhere. Not with her puppy curled in a towel in the break room of the station, and not with the puzzle pieces finally starting to fit. Shadow had vanished into the woods surrounding Ashland. If she was alive, if she was watching, it was because she trusted him to act, to finish what Greg had started. Dalton didn't know where the trail would take him, but he knew where to start. Ronin Biotech. It sounded like something out of a bad thriller novel. On the surface, they specialized in genetic monitoring for service animal health, a fancy way of saying they poked around in dog DNA. But deeper down, the financials were murky. Their board included former pharmaceutical executives, ex-military consultants, and one name that made his stomach turn, Eric Weston, a developer once tied to illegal animal enhancement programs in Texas before the charges mysteriously disappeared. Dalton parked outside the old warehouse district on Route 33. It had been a bustling industrial zone back in the 80s, but now it looked like something out of a ghost story. Boarded windows, barbed wire fences, and cracked concrete coated in ivy. But what caught his attention was the sign on the gate. Future home of Ronin Biotech Research and Development. Fresh, bright, untouched by time or weather. He stepped out of the car. The place wasn't abandoned at all. Back at the station, Jenna Brooks stared at the little German Shepherd pups snuggled into the makeshift kennel. They'd started calling him Scout. He was curious, alert, but quieter than she expected a pup to be. Trauma, no doubt. He'd seen things no puppy should see. Dr. Ellie Carson had come back that morning with Scout's updated blood panel. This puppy's been exposed to stimulants, cognitive enhancers, the kind being tested in experimental therapies, not for animals, for humans. Jenna blinked. You're saying they were testing human drugs on the dog? Ellie hesitated. I'm saying they weren't just testing. They were creating, manipulating genes, selective breeding. Scout isn't just a puppy. He's a prototype. Jenna's eyes widened. For what? The vet didn't answer. She just stared through the glass of the sleeping pup, her expression grim. Dalton walked the perimeter of the facility slowly. Cameras were positioned at every corner. High-end stuff, infrared facial recognition. This wasn't just a research lab. It was a compound. But it was the scent that stopped him. He caught on a breeze, faint but unmistakable. Vet fear, blood, urine, fear. And then he saw it, just beyond the far fence at the edge of the woods. Half hidden beneath low-hanging pine branches was a large patch of disturbed earth. Something had been dragged, a paw print in the mud, deep, pressed with force. He crouched beside it, brushing his fingers along the edges. Too large for the puppy. This was hers. Shadow had been here. A metallic click behind him made him freeze. Don't move, a voice growled. Dalton slowly raised his hands. Private property, the voice said. Trespassers don't walk away here. Dalton turned to face the speaker. The man was dressed in black tactical gear. No vayis, no pachis. Just a man with a rifle and a job to do. Security. The kind you hire when you don't want the cops involved. I'm looking for a missing dog, Dalton said calmly. She was AK-9, highly trained. She came here. I'm just following up on an animal welfare lead. The man didn't budge. You got a warrant? Nope. Then you got nothing. Go home. Dalton gave him a long look. You can threaten me, but if something illegal is going on here, I will be back. And next time, I won't be alone. The man smiled. I hope you bring friends. Makes the cleanup more fun. That evening, Dalton met with Jenna and Ellie in a diner on the outskirts of town. He explained everything. The facility, the private security, the paw prints, and the presence of Shadow's scent. Something bad is going on there, he said. And Shadow knows it. That's why she brought Scout to us. She's trying to expose something. She didn't just escape. She infiltrated. Jenna pulled out her tablet. I cross-checked the names from your old reports. Rona Biotech has links to 3 other companies across state lines. All of them specialize in either canine genetics or combat behavior research. And get this, 2 of them got quiet settlements from military contracts. Ellie added, if this is what it looks like, they're engineering dogs for one thing, obedience and enhancement. And they're starting young. Scout isn't just bred to be loyal. He's bred to be something more. Faster, smarter, maybe even expendable. Dalton rubbed his temples. They turned service animals into test subjects. Ellie looked at him. No, worse. They're turning them into weapons. That night, Dalton sat outside the kennel room, Scout curled up at his feet. The puppy stirred in his sleep, whining softly. Mark leaned forward. I failed her once, he whispered. Not again. Then he heard it. A scrape. A soft growl. He looked toward the window. There she was. Shadow, watching from the tree line. Mud clinging to her fur. Eyes sharp, intelligent, and burning with warning. Dalton rose and stepped forward. Where have you been, girl? He said softly. What did they do to you? She didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared. And then, in a flash, she was gone again, melted into the trees like a ghost of war. But he had seen her, and in her eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in a long, long time. Hope. The next morning, Dalton stood by the window of the Ashland police station, coffee cold in his hand, eyes fixed on the woods outside. He hadn't slept again. Shadow hadn't come back, but he could feel her presence nearby. She was watching, waiting. Scout dozed in the kennel, more alert now, recovering quickly thanks to the supplements Dr. Carson provided. But what haunted Dalton most were the scans. The x-rays showed something under Scout's skin. Not natural. A chip, metallic, high frequency, embedded near his spinal column. Ellie had looked him in the eye and said, whatever this is, it's not meant for tracking. It's meant for control. And that was the moment the case went from personal to war. Dalton drove to the edge of Ashland, where the farms give way to old, forgotten roads. He met someone he hadn't seen in years, Detective Rhea Morris, formerly with Richmond PD's Animal Trafficking Task Force. Now, she ran a private investigation firm after her career had been derailed by internal politics and threats she'd never proven came from Rona Biotech. She greeted Dalton with a long stare and a hard handshake. Didn't expect to hear from you, she said. Not unless it was about her. She's back, he said. Morris's face hardened. Shadow? He nodded. And she's not alone. He laid the photos on the hood of his car. Scout scar. The warehouse sign. The chip scans. Shadow's paw prints. She took a deep breath. I filed 10 reports about that company in 4 years, she muttered. Every time I got close, someone above me shut it down. They've got people everywhere. Judges, city council. Even the damn agriculture board. You poke them, and they don't just bark back. They bury you. Then we don't poke, Dalton said. We expose. Morris stared at him. You got a plan? He didn't answer. Not yet. At noon, the call came. Jenna's voice on the other end was shaky. Mark, you need to come back. Now. He pulled into the station, lot 10 minutes later. EMTs were leaving. Officers were standing around, stunned. One of the back windows had been shattered. Scout was gone. Dalton stormed into the break room, rage rising. What happened? Jenna motioned to the security screen. It was fast. They cut the power. For men, black masks, tranquilizers. One of them knew exactly where the cameras were. like they'd done this before. Dalton's stomach dropped. They took him. Jenna nodded. And they left this. She handed him a note. You want him back? Stop digging, or we bury the next one. Dalton clenched his jaw so tight his teeth ached. He's a puppy, Jenna whispered. What kind of monsters? Dalton didn't answer. He was already walking out the door. That night, Shadow returned. But this time, she didn't come alone. Dalton was sitting in his truck near the tree lean when he saw them, two figures darting through the brush. She was leading another dog, scarred, limping, smaller. A young German shepherd, covered in dried blood and wearing a shredded harness marked with faded red paint. Dalton stepped out, slow and calm. Shadow growled low, her body blocking the other dog protectively. He knelt. It's okay, girl. I'm not here to take him. The second dog looked half dead, eyes glazed, every rib visible. Shadow moved closer, nostrils flaring, as if trying to smell who Dalton really was. Then she lowered her head and let the second dog step forward. Jenna arrived moments later. We have to get him to Ellie. As they gently loaded the injured shepherd into the back of her SUV, Dalton touched Shadow's fur. You brought him out, he murmured. You went back in. She didn't respond. She just stared at him. A soldier, a protector, a mother who hadn't given up. At the vet clinic, Ellie worked through the night. The new dog, named Valor, had bruised kidneys, drugged muscle tissue, and puncture scars. But what shook them all was what Ellie found embedded in his skull. It's a behavioral mod chip, she said, holding up the scan. Not for GPS. For impulses. Whoever controlled him could make him attack, stop, or freeze with a signal. Jenna gasped. That's illegal, isn't it? Beyond illegal, Ellie said. This isn't just abuse. It's a military prototype. But the patent, it's still pending. Which means someone's using unapproved tech. Dalton sat down hard. They're building weapons. Dogs that follow commands without thought. No loyalty. No conscience. No fear. Ellie nodded, and Shadow stole one back. That night, as rain pelted the roof, Dalton sat with Shadow on the clinic floor. She was soaked, limping, but her eyes never left the hallway where Valor lay recovering. She's not running anymore, Ellie whispered. She's fighting back. Dalton looked down at the scar on his Shadow's neck, now visible in the lamplight. They experimented on her too, he said. But she beat it. She escaped it. He swallowed hard. She's not just a survivor, he whispered. She's the whistleblower. 2 nights later, the Ashland Fire Department was called to a blaze outside town. A storage unit near the industrial zone, reduced to ash by morning. But what was inside that mattered? Dozens of animal crates, some scorched, some melted shut, and a folder of burned documents with one word legible on the charred corner. Ronan. They were cleaning house. Jenna Brooks stared at the news broadcast with her arms crossed. They're erasing everything. Dr. Ellie Carson was quieter than usual, her face pale. Someone knew we were closing in. This wasn't just a fire. It was a warning. Dalton stood at the station window again, Shadow at his side. She had barely left his presence since Valor's rescue. She was still limping, still raw. But her spirit never wavered. She followed him from room to room like a soldier returning to her post. The message from Ronan Biotech was clear. Stop digging or suffer. But Shadow's eyes, every time he looked at them, said something else. Don't stop. Not now. Rhea Morris returned to town that evening with a USB drive. Whistleblowers sent this anonymously, she said. Encrypted files, internal memos, clinical trials, failed test reports, and photographs. Dalton inserted the drive into his secure laptop. What appeared on screen turned his stomach. Photos of German shepherds in cages. Eyes dull, skin stretched over ribs. Notes scribbled. Injection site reacted poorly. Too much aggression. Memory loss. Refuses command. Terminate. And at the bottom of the folder, one photo, dated 4 months ago. A close-up of Shadow. Her eyes terrified. Her mouth muzzled. A serial number tattooed behind her ear. Jenna choked back a sob. She's not just a witness, Rhea said. She's evidence. They printed everything. Photos, reports, drug logs, lab memos. And then they called a meeting. Not in the station. Not in any official building. They met in the back room of Old Finch's Hardware, a spot no one would think to check. Present were only those who could be trusted: Ellie, Jenna, Rhea, a retired judge, and a local journalist from Charlottesville who had been tracking Ronan's shady grants for years. They spread the files across the table. "This is enough," the judge said. "Enough to trigger a federal investigation, if we can get it into the right hands. And stay alive doing it," Rhea added. The next day, Shadow took them back. Dalton was sitting in the clinic yard, petting Valor when she approached and nuzzled his hand. Then she turned, walked to the fence. "Look back. Follow me." He stood, Jenna by his side. They called Ellie and Rhea, grabbed vests, radios, flashlights, and they followed her. Through woods, across dry creek beds, past old cattle fences and rusted machinery, until they reached a path carved by footsteps and paws, a tunnel of trees that ended in a rusted gate with a fallen sign. Calhoun Training and Boarding Facility. Closed since 2019. "Ronan bought this land under a dummy corporation last year," Jenna whispered. Shadow slipped through the gap in the gate and vanished into the darkness. Dalton followed. Inside, the building reeked of bleach, blood, and fear. The walls were lined with kennels, each marked with a barcode. Some still had bowls inside. Others had claw marks on the walls. There were surgical lights in one room, crates of medical supplies in another. A half-loaded van waited near the back door, engines still warm. They moved quickly, documenting everything. Ellie took photos. Rhea uploaded files. Jenna tagged each room on the map. Then Dalton heard it, a low growl. He turned and froze. At the far end of the hall, behind reinforced glass, stood a massive German shepherd, bigger than Shadow. Muscles rippled beneath patchy fur. But its eyes were wrong. Empty, flat, controlled. Shadow stepped between them. She growled, not in fear but command. The other dog twitched, snarled, then backed away. Jenna whispered. She knew him. She trained with him, Dalton said. Before the raid, before they twisted him. Shadow walked to the glass and sat, staring. Then she looked back at Dalton. "Help him." They broke open every cage, loaded 3 surviving dogs into the van, and sent video footage directly to the USDA and the Justice Department. Then they left the building dark and silent, the evidence secured, and the truth finally ready to see daylight. As they drove away, Shadow sat beside Dalton, watching the trees blur past. Her ears perked, her breathing steady. She had done it. She had brought them back to the place where her nightmare began and ended it. Later that night, Valor stood for the first time without help. Scout nuzzled under Shadow's chin. The other rescues slept in warm blankets for the first time in months. And Officer Mark Dalton stood at his desk, badge in hand, whispering to Greg Monroe's old photo. "We're not done yet," he said, "but we're close." 2 days later, the federal agents arrived. For unmarked vehicles, 2 men in suits, 1 woman with the USDA, and a quiet, Sirius K-9 handler from the U.S. Army. They didn't say much, just flashed credentials, collected the files, and sealed off the Calhoun facility with yellow tape and silent efficiency. The local news caught wind of the operation. A headline on Channel 6 blared, "Underground dog experimentation, ring exposed in Virginia, federal probe underway." Dalton, Jenna, and Ellie watched from the break room. "They're actually doing it," Jenna whispered. "They have to," Ellie added. "Too much proof. Too many witnesses now." Shadow lay on the floor near them, watching the screen. Calm, still, but something in her breathing wasn't right. "She's not recovering," Ellie said quietly. Dalton turned to her, alarmed. "What do you mean?" "The chip, the enhancers, the trauma. She pushed too hard. When she brought back those other dogs, when she led us into that hellhole, she gave us everything she had left." Ellie placed her hand gently on Shadow's shoulder. "She's tired. She just doesn't want to leave until she knows they're safe." That night, as Scout and Valor curled up beside her, Shadow refused food, refused water. She licked Scout gently, then Valor. Then she rested her head between them and exhaled long and deep, as if letting go of something she'd been carrying for years. Dalton lay beside her on the floor, his badge in one hand, Greg Monroe's old photo in the other. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For all of it. Shadow's ear twitched. I couldn't save you then, but you saved us now. She opened her eyes one last time and met his. Not with fear, with forgiveness and peace. Then she closed them again and didn't open them. The next morning, Shadow was buried beneath the old oak tree behind the station. Dalton wrapped her in the flag from the K-9 unit she'd once served. Beside her, they buried the collar Greg gave her when she was a pup. On the grave marker it read, Shadow, partner, protector, proof. You were their voice when no one else listened. The whole town came. Kids, farmers, teachers, cops, soldiers. Even people who once doubted the story now stood shoulder to shoulder, some with tears, some with silence, but all with respect. The final act of a dog who had given her life, not in battle, but in truth. 1 week later, the federal indictments came down. Eric Weston, charged with illegal animal testing, fraud, and conspiracy. Ronan Biotech, shut down, with all facilities seized. 3 high-ranking officials in Virginia's Agriculture Board, removed and under investigation. The prototype enhancement chip banned under federal animal welfare legislation. The other dogs were sent to rehabilitation homes across the country. But 2 stayed behind. Scout and Valor, adopted by the Ashland PD. And Dalton? He returned to duty. But different, stronger, softer, with new scars, but a cleaner heart. Every morning, Scout rode beside him in the patrol car, ears perked, tail wagging. Every evening, they passed the oak tree. And every time, Scout would stop, sniff the earth, and sit for just a second before continuing on. Dalton never rushed him. Some ghosts deserve to be visited. Shadow's story isn't just about a heroic dog. It's about what one being can endure, overcome, and inspire. Her journey reminds us that even when we feel voiceless, our actions can roar louder than any scream. She fought not only for herself, but for others who couldn't fight for themselves. She taught us that redemption is real, that trust can be rebuilt, and that healing is always possible, even from the deepest wounds. In a world where cruelty often hides behind polished doors, sometimes it takes a dog to remind us how to be human again. What did Shadow's story mean to you? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have a story of a heroic dog in your life? Share below. And don't forget to subscribe to the Heart Force channel, where hope comes on 4 legs.